All right. Terrific. So here we are, elementary live streaming. Your kids are in both live and streaming environments at the same time. Let's figure out how to do this well. The slide that's up right now just shows the registration links. You're already there. Do know that this slide deck is something you'll want to go through in more detail because many of the slides include links to additional information, which we do not have nearly enough time to go through in 90 minutes, but we'll see what we can do. Course outline is using this slide deck and the back channel, which Steve can post in the network anytime, in our chat at any time. We will have a demo of some of the hardware that we're going to be using. And we have an opportunity to hear from some teachers who are live streaming. Oh, look at that. Somebody is joining from outside. We'll go ahead and admit them because it gives us a real life example of people joining without being signed into their DPS accounts. Great. So I'm going to go ahead and continue here. And the course itself came from a live streaming instructional guidance from ELA, and the code to join that course, if you want to go through it in more detail, is available on that slide. Our session outline, we'll be talking about whole group instruction. We'll be talking about student collaboration. We'll be talking about small group and independent work. We will also be touching on content areas and specialized groups. Live streaming, professional learning. What is live streaming? I'd like to hear from you guys. So I'm going to just drop in a poll and see what you guys, actually, I won't do it as a poll. I'm going to do it as a question. Sorry. In the chat, there are some additional tools that we're demonstrating. What is live streaming for you in your classroom? Oh. That's a chat. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like is a question. Nope. Yes. Yes, I'm going to do it as a question. What is live streaming for you? And this is where, as a question, you can upvote this. If you're clicking on it at the moment, you can looking in the Q&A. This is up in the upper right corner. There are some tools. Looks like a little triangle and a square and a circle. These are additional tools that are part of the enterprise license Google Meet. And if you click then on the Q&A, you'll see the question there, what is live streaming for you? Steve just posted in the slide deck in the back channel in there. And I think that's an important one. So I'm going to click the little thumb up to upvote it. And we can see additional people voting in there as well. So just a little example of some of the tools that are available. We'll try to sneak those in as we're doing the presentation. Basically, I think if you keep in mind the idea that the remote learning you have been doing is still continuing. You're remote teaching to all of your class. Some of them happen to be, thankfully, in the room with you where you can provide them with more support. So that's the way I think about it, and it keeps me from trying to make it too complicated. I've already figured out remote teaching. I've been doing it for several weeks. Now that I've got kids coming back in, I don't have to throw all of that out and try to reinvent everything all over again. So that's the construct that I keep in mind that helps keep me from going crazy. All right. So physically, the technology you will probably want to have in your room, you need some kind of computers. One for the teacher and one for each student who's coming to your classroom. If they are bringing the Chromebooks or iPads that they are assigned from home to school and from school back to home each day, then they have it available. You'll want to think about, for example, do you have charging areas for the schools? Do you have Adapters. Do you have an extra charger that they didn't bring their charger? Do you know where these are in your building? Do you have anyone there who's helping you with arranging the room so you've got enough power that you can do some charging throughout the day? A lot of students now have Chromebooks that are, well, how shall we say, not the newest version. They're vintage Chromebooks, and those batteries don't necessarily hold much of a charge anymore. So keep in mind that they might last for an hour or two. They might not last at all unless they're plugged in. So make some arrangements for that. We do think that paying attention to sound is going to be very important, partly because your face is going to be muzzled. You've got a mask on, and it's going to be hard for people to hear you. You may not have a REDCAT audio system, for example, in your classroom. If you do, terrific, make use of that. If you have any other volume enhancer that at your disposal, like speakers, you might want to consider taking advantage of those so that kids can hear you and are benefiting from the articulation, not just the volume. And also cameras. We like the idea of having more than one camera going on so that there's sort of a whole class view. I'm going to demonstrate that in a little bit. That helps the virtual kids and the in-class kids all feel like they're participating together, because you want to, again, focus on the things you do well, the teaching, the communication, the community that you build inside of your classroom. You want the virtual and the in-person kids to both feel like they are part of that ongoing community. All right, so one thing that you might want to keep in mind is know where all of the extra chargers are stored in your school in case a student forgets to bring one. That's a pro tip there for you. All right, so there are 3 ways to do some sound. One is with a Bluetooth device. I'm going to turn on my camera. Oh, my camera's already on. I'm going to show you a couple of examples. This pair of headphones is a Bluetooth headphone, and it has a very small hole, which is an actual microphone. So if I pair this with my laptop, I now can wander around the room to help the kids that are there, socially distancing appropriately, of course, but I can still hear anywhere in my classroom the students who are virtual. So if I need to respond to something that's going on there, they can hear me because of the microphone, and I can hear them because they're headphones. Some of you may be more familiar with this little device. You might even have one of these. This is an AirPod. These are also Bluetooth headphones that have a microphone on them. And again, if you pair this with your laptop, these are not just for your phone or any other kind of wireless headsets for your phone. They can be connected via Bluetooth to your laptop, provided you have a new enough laptop that has Bluetooth on it. Most of them do, not all. But that also allows you to be untethered throughout the room, but connected through your headphones anywhere in the space. The next version, if you don't have any of those, is a wired set, a headphone with a microphone, but it is directly connected to your laptop, your Chromebook or Dell or Mac laptop. That ties you to a specific location. You could add something like this. You can't see it very well. You could get a USB extender to give you a little more distance, but you're still physically tied to the location of your laptop. If you have something like a REDCAT audio system already in your classroom, I definitely recommend using them. We are recommending an additional version, a newer version from a different company It's a little more expensive. We'll get into the details about that later. We talked to the district audiologists about a recommendation. They are not cheap. And the next system that we have as another option is also not cheap. This is an all-in-one unit. It includes a very nice widescreen webcam that allows you to remotely zoom and also to pan from side to side. It also has a very nice set of speakers as your sole source of audio and a great microphone built in. So it could also be your sole source of input. That's something that you would connect to your computer and would be the eye into the room for the rest of the world, your virtual kids. While I'm on the idea of microphones and multiple microphones in the classroom, it's always a good idea to have one sound source and one microphone, so that's the input, so that you don't have a lot of echo or reverb. Because the more microphones that are on, the more likely the chance there will be an echo that's picked up by those extra microphones. All right. Well, that's a little strange for the presentation. Let me make this a little bit bigger so it's more visible. That slide is a little strange. I don't know why it's like that. There is a link to a location where you can buy some of this equipment. I'm not going to click on it now, but it includes some pricing for a fairly inexpensive webcam that you can set up. Also a very inexpensive document camera. Any document camera that says that it's a webcam capable is going to work okay in Google Meet. Sometimes when you connect, for example, a Ladybug camera to your computer because you're running software that allows you to present what's on the document camera, the computer itself might think, oh, this is the primary camera since there's one that's now connected. But it's not, your Ladybug camera is doubtfully going to, it's not going to connect to your Google Meet as a camera. It's not going to work as a webcam. It works as a document camera. It does not work as a webcam. I'll show you a couple of ways around that. But it's got information on all of the different components, maybe a little tripod if you get the small webcam, wireless headsets, and then the Phonak, P-H-O-N-A-K, Roger Digimaster system is the one that the audiologists are now recommending in the district. I also would not recommend ordering a Lightspeed REDCAT right now because they're back ordered until December because everybody bought up their entire supply. All right. Steve, before I continue, are there any questions or anything coming up that I should address?
I don't believe so. Let me just check the back channel one more time. Nope. I think you should keep moving right along.
Cool. All right. Then I'm going to show you a quick demo of a couple of different things. I'm going to switch my presentation to another tab. Let me stop presenting for a moment and present something different. And what I have here that I'm presenting now is a camera that I purchased from Amazon for $140. Provides a nice widescreen view of my classroom. What you're seeing is what I see in the Google Meet. So it's mirrored where it says welcome class. You're seeing that written backwards. But it does provide enough of a view that I can show the class to, if I were in the Meet with this camera, you would see it correctly. I'm only seeing it backwards so that it's a mirror, so I can more easily adjust where things are. When I reach my left hand out, I I can tell where this is instead of trying to mirror or figure out on backwards to adjust something. I'm also going to try this. I know this works. If you really want to raise the stakes for a very little price, on Android or iOS phones, there is a Google Meet app, and I'm going to join the meeting that my camera is in, because I'm signed into my DPS account here. And I can shoot. I'm going to turn off the microphone, and I want the camera on. And I'm now switching to my phone, and I can carry this and unplug my headphones for a moment.
From the text or just
So that was a connection all the way from my camera to my computer. I just wanted to show you what that looked like. I didn't say anything while I walked away, but I could now use this if I set up my camera someplace where it should look correct now to me. I can also use this to read a book to the kids. So it can function. It can function a lot like a document camera does. So if you've got a phone, it's got an app. You can also carry around your own mobile camera anytime you want to do that in the classroom. My network for my phone is not great, so that's not too important, but I'm gonna stop presenting there and go back to presenting my presentation. Should be coming up quickly. There we go. All right. So I just wanted you to know that it's not necessary to spend a ton of money. You can set this up fairly easily. You can join when needed from your phone. You don't have to have your phone connected all of the time, just when you need a mobile document camera. Gonna disconnect from there. Awesome. But that's one way to provide an eye into the classroom for all of your virtual students. All right, next slide. Recording guidance. It's very important to remember not to share recordings outside of DPS. Please keep it within your Seesaw or Schoology classes. And that we have additional information about culturally responsiveness in our classroom as well, about accepting what kids are wearing and whether they are turning cameras on or not as an option. To record a meeting, as Steve so kindly reminded us to do for this session. He clicked on the 3 dots down in the lower right corner and started recording. Don't click it now because you might turn the recording off. Let's not do that. Students do not have the option to turn on or turn off the recording. That's a teacher-only option. So let's talk a little bit about whole group instructions broken down into routines, culturally responsive guidance, using Seesaw, how your classroom is physically set up, and prepping for live streaming. So get right into it. Just as you would if your students had been in your classroom with you all year, you want to establish online norms. For some reason, students don't think of behavior as it applies to multiple locations and environments. You have to teach them in each instance how to behave and what the expectations are. That is an important consideration for kids who have been virtual and they haven't been in your classroom yet. They have to relearn what it means to be in person, especially now that there are restrictions on getting up out of their seats and being close to other people and wearing masks, and there are just new things that people need to know. There's also use of timers and schedules can be very helpful to kids. If you haven't seen it before, I'm going to pop one into the Google chat. You can send students a timer by sending them a link to a Google search, which just has the format of 10+ minute plus timer. This is an example. If they click on that, it automatically starts a 10-minute timer for them. If you only want it to be a 5-minute timer for them to keep track of, just put a 5+ minute plus timer there, and it'll automatically start a 5-minute timer when they click on it. So they know how long the break is, when to come back, or how long they're supposed to spend in silent reading, or whatever it is that you're asking them to keep track of. Just a very simple way to send them a timer to do that for them, because sometimes kids can't keep track of time for themselves. Cameras are not necessarily always required. The experience that I've seen so far is that sometimes it's more difficult to get kids to turn cameras on or microphones on and actually engage than it is to encourage them to mute them and to turn off their cameras. That seems to be very simple and easy for them to do. But we don't want to place too much pressure on kids when it might not be a safe space for them to share. It may be a very noisy environment, for example. It may be a space where I've heard from a school where a family had to relocate to a shelter. Maybe they really don't want to share that information with everybody else in the classroom. And so requiring them to turn on a camera that would show people being in a shelter might not be the safest thing for them to do. When you are using the camera, focus on the faces, though. Those are important. We'll talk a little bit now about keeping items in your LMS, your learning management system. We have provided Seesaw for elementary schools and Schoology for secondary schools. It's important to continue keeping that location going, that learning management system, as your focus for where your assignments are, partly because you still have kids that are remote, they're virtual right now, but also because at some point it's likely that you will experience some duration of remote learning as well. So you want to make sure that all the kids, those are in class and out of class, are receiving the same instruction, same access to that instruction, even if there's an interruption in class capability. We want to make sure that that's something that we keep going on. Breakout rooms. We are not going to do this at this point. I'm going to do a little bit of a demo of what the new Meet breakout rooms look like in a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and move on. The next slide does include a number of resources for you for Seesaw. In addition to Seesaw, we have a number of resources, Screencastify, Edpuzzle, all kinds of other stuff on our DPS EdTech YouTube channel. Go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Come back often and see all our cool videos. There's a ton of stuff in there. We also have some all-in-one documents, one for Seesaw and one for Schoology, which link to all of our resources. So you can have everything you ever wanted to know about Seesaw or Schoology from there. If you don't already know who your regional digital coach is, there's also a link here to look that information up. So check that out if you're not sure who your digital regional coach is. I happen to be the regional coach for Central Schools. So if you're in the Central region, yay, that's me. All right. Physical classroom setup might look something like this little graphic, where there's a teacher who's using a projector. It might be just a projector, or it might be an interactive whiteboard like a Promethean board, displaying what she's teaching from her laptop to the board. It's also being presented virtually to the students who are also coming to school. In this case, this teacher happened to have an additional Chromebook or device of some kind that could display the Google Meet so that the other students can see who's in the class, even if they're not in building. You can sign into Google Meet as many times from as many devices as you want to. So the teacher can sign in to Google Meet with their own account to bring up the screen of what's going on in the Meet. Just make sure when you do that, that you're muting the presenter in that case so that you're not getting an echo. Keep that in mind. Every time you sign in, even as a presentation, that's another microphone that's live that could come up with an echo. So think about providing an actual physical seat for your virtual students. Probably somewhere, at least on the teacher's laptop, there should be some connection there so that the teacher can monitor what's going on. All right. Cameras and sound prep. You will probably want to set your camera so that, like the one I showed you earlier, so that you can actually see the visuals, whether that's the whiteboard or the projector, what's up on the wall. For the kids that are in the virtual space, unless you're presenting it directly, that's a better image. If you're presenting what you're putting up on the projector through the Google Meet directly to the students, they'll see it clearer on their screen and they don't need to see it through a camera. Sound is often, that's a tough one because it's the easiest quality to miss. Even in the Meet we've had, there have probably been a couple of times where my voice has dropped out a little bit and then had to catch up. I've noticed a lot in virtual meetings like this that every once in a while people's voices will sound like a screen door getting torn open, sort of. That's just a function of the network, and there's not much we can do about that. But you want to make sure that you are situated where close enough to your microphone where your voice is being picked up clearly, or you're using an external microphone like on a camera, and that you've tested all of this. That's a great option. If you haven't done that yet, once you've got your room set up, ask a couple of other teachers to join a Meet just so you can test it out and see what happens. Then they can set up a Meet, see how their setup is. You can join their Meet so they can troubleshoot it and see how things are all put together. But keep in mind, sound is also very important. The computer prep. You definitely want to open up your Google Meet before the class starts. That's an important step because it allows you then to maintain the host controls. Another way to do that is to set up the Google Meet link in a Google Calendar, but that does not really give you the option to do much with a lookup code that's used the same every day by the kids. So the best practice is probably first thing when you come in the morning, you open up your general classroom, homeroom Meet before anybody's even there, before you're even going to be doing anything with it, just so that you know that you're ready to go as the host when it's time to start up. You don't even have to fully join the meeting. You just have to go into the room. You can be in that waiting room lobby area. As long as you're the first one that does that, then you'll get the little blue shield. You'll be able to turn on quick access or not, turn on the chat or not, those kinds of things. The ability to share screens you can turn on or off. And that's part of the regular Google Meet feature. But you want that. You don't want to necessarily have somebody else who checked the room and then you came in second and you don't have any way to control or mute any of the kids. Just bring that up, push the screen off to the Meet window in a separate window, just move that off to the side a bit so that you can do whatever other work you need to do and not worry about it until it's time to use that Meet. You can have multiple windows open with that, so that if you have to have a second Meet open someplace or a third Meet open, you can open them first thing when you get into your classroom, and then turn the quick access off even, and only turn quick access on before it's time for the kids to jump in. So my recommendation is start them early and often. Organizing your screens. I have several screens open right now. I have my Google Meet session in one screen. I have my presentation in another screen. By the way, there's a way to use a tab for a Google slide in presentation mode without losing all of the other tabs. And you can see that now at the end of my address. I deleted everything after the slash that normally says edit. I deleted all of that stuff at the end. I'm not going to delete it now. And I put in the word present instead. And that gives me access to the tab, but it gives me access to all of my other tabs. I don't think you can see those. But it shows my slide deck in presentation mode. So for example, if I'm clicking on something, it's a live link. It moves me to the next one. If there is a link on the slide, it would actually open that link. But it gives it in a way that I have access to the rest of my screen without being in full screen mode. So switch the address from edit, delete all that, put in present, and then you're seeing the presentation in a tab as a presentation. All right. Also, review your Google Meet security features. Wrong screen. Those are not in my presentation screen. Let me stop presenting for a moment. They include, let's see, it's a little bit strange. I'm going to go ahead and show this window. Presenting my screen, which will show everybody else's screen. You can now see the host controls that you have. One is called quick access. That quick access allows students to just be moving right into your class if they are signed into their DPS accounts and they have the link to your session, which is usually in the lookup/nickname format. They'll get right in. If I turn that off, that means they can't jump in, and they have to be invited to join this. It's kind of like a private meeting. You want your students to just get in, which is the simple way to do it. You do that. If they start inviting other people into the room, you can turn that off, and then nobody else can be joining the room. It doesn't happen a whole lot in elementary schools, but boy, by the time they get to middle school, they start inviting people, and they to use the generic term, they Zoom bomb your meeting at any opportunity. You can also turn on or off the option for students to share their screens and use the chat features. So all of those are available to you as host of the session. And I wanted you to see what those were. I'm going to demo now a poll. So these are additional tools that you would have as if you have the Google Enterprise license. It's $24 per teacher. Your administration needs to send in a list of who is going to be, who needs licenses and their .NET email addresses. And then you'll have all of these fun tools too. Polls, I can start a poll, I can ask a question. I'm going to ask, what does your school use for video conferencing? I could spell it just a little bit better there. Meet, Zoom, other. And you can add as many options to this as you want. It does show who's answering what. So it's a part of tracking. It's built in. So I saved this. I can create these ahead of time. I don't have to do them on the fly. I can create them when I want to and then launch them when I'm ready. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that poll, and we'll see if anybody votes in there or not. Again, it's up in the presenter presentation tools, up by the chat and the list of everybody who's in there. So we're seeing some votes in here. So far, nobody's an other yet. So it's probably encouraging that we're only at least only using 2 platforms for videos, right? And for those of you who've been in Zoom for a while, you're very familiar with this kind of a function where you can ask questions and put people in breakout rooms and that kind of thing. So let's see, in the presentation itself, we've done those. See, now I'm getting another join from outside the meeting. I'm going to go ahead and admit them. That would be an indication of a non-DPS account joining the meet. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. This is not really important that we have an actual vote in this case. I also now have the option to show the results to everybody or not. So I just turned that on. So you don't have to allow people to see what the results are. This is something that can be a little confidential, or can be an opportunity for discussion around what people might choose as an option before revealing what the class decided they wanted to do. Same thing happens with questions and answers. We did that a little bit earlier. Real quickly, then I'll go ahead and show you the breakout rooms here. I'm going to stretch this out a little bit farther so you can see more. And as you can tell, it automatically assigns people to different rooms. It's putting 4 people by default in a room. I can change the number of rooms that I want. I can keep it down to 3 or 4 rooms. And now that I have just 2 rooms, it automatically assigns people 17 in each room. That's a little silly. Who would want to be in a small group? 17 is not a small group, obviously. So I'm going to break this down until I get to about 5 or so. It's kind of manageable. That gave me 7 rooms in this case. Hopefully you're not going to have this many people, this many students in your room at a time. But if there is, for a reason I want to move a couple of people directly from one room to another room, I have the option to just drag and drop them from one place to another and assign them wherever I want them to go. I can also change the names of these breakout rooms. I'm not going to do that for all of these. Topical one here. There we go. So I would go through and name my rooms. And when I'm ready to assign people to these rooms, I'm going to go ahead and click this Open Rooms button. When I do that, you'll be invited to join a room. I will come into each of the rooms just to say hi and ask you to come back to the main session. And so you can see how that's going to work. So here we go. I'm going to open up the rooms. Takes a little while for the invites to go out. All right, so everybody's back here or will be soon. I didn't actually get the chance to jump into each one of the rooms, but I could jump from room to room by just clicking the join. There was a join link there. And each of you had the option to return to the main room. These rooms, these breakouts can stay because until I clear this, all of these are still available. So this is one way to, as we'll talk about a little bit, one way to chunk the activity into smaller bits. So for example, I might do a mini lesson with the class whole group, send people into their small groups, do a quick check-in with each one by clicking the join that I have available to drop into each one of the sessions, see how things are going, and then invite everybody to come back to the main group. We do a little debrief on what they were working on, give them a little more clarification, for example, or an additional step that they're going to follow. They can then go back to their small group that they were assigned to over and over again. So it's not something you have to recreate each time. As long as this session is continued and you haven't cleared everything, these rooms are still available. You still have an option to join the small breakout room. It should still be available to you. You should see that somewhere.
Matthew,
Yeah.
there are several questions about breakout rooms that are popping up in the Q&A.
Okay.
And so I can kind of characterize two different ones.
Yeah.
So one question essentially is, what does it look like for a teacher to circulate? So let's say you've got your 5 breakout rooms.
Right.
What does a teacher do to see what's happening in those rooms?
In each of these rooms, the teacher has a join room. I can't remember exactly what it says. Join room, I think is what it says. That takes me to the Meet for that group. I just see a regular Google Meet with the people in that room in that space. That's all I see. I also see the option to switch to the other rooms. I can jump into any of the rooms that I want. But I can only be in one room at a time. And then I can also come back to the main room as well.
Yeah, and
just leave the breakout, it takes me back to the main room.
And just one thing I would add to that, and this is what we discussed in our breakout room, is if you're thinking about it, think about the analogy of how you would circulate through your classroom. Let's say you've got 5 different small groups meeting in your classroom, and you're circulating to check in with each of those groups as you go. If you're checking in with a particular group, most of the time, especially the groups that are farther away from you, you're not actually able to hear what they're saying or be able to directly monitor them. So the idea is that you just thinking about how would you circulate through your classroom, how would you circulate through the rooms to make sure that students are staying on task and doing the things that they've been asked to do. And so Matthew, switching to the other question, there are, I think that most of those, and then the question around just how you bring people back. And I haven't run breakout rooms since this maybe changed, Matthew, but when Lisbon was doing it this morning, she was actually able to pull everybody back into the main room rather than request it.
I haven't been able to do it as anything other than by doing it. I suppose if I closed the room here with an X and like deleted that room, that would probably bump people back into this main session.
Yeah, I think that is what she did. I just didn't have a chance to check in with her.
That must be what she did, because otherwise there isn't unless I go through and I remove people individually from rooms. I could do just that. I guess if there were one student I needed to talk to, like I need to talk to Jill. Jill, I'm gonna just take you out of this room. I'm gonna talk to you in the main room, and then I'm gonna reassign you back to this session, because I can drag your name back down here. So I guess I could do something like that too. The question about monitoring other rooms, you can only monitor one breakout at a time.
Yeah.
It doesn't allow you the option to see what's going on. It doesn't give you a preview of what's on the cameras or anything. It's just an option to go into that room.
Something to keep in mind too, that part of the reason for that is actually technical limitations of your machines. The more video conferencing tabs you have open simultaneously, the more it affects the performance of the machine. So just keep that in mind. There are definitely limitations, and it would be nice to be able to have all of them open and be able to see what's going on. But even relatively powerful laptops really struggle with that. So you'd want to keep that in mind in terms of, even if you could solve for it, you'd probably need a more powerful machine in order to make it work well.
In order to get breakout rooms in Google Meets, your school will need to request Google Enterprise licenses and pay $24 per teacher that's going to be using them.
Yeah, and Aaron Murphy, just your question about pulling people back. I will add that to our back channel Q&A, and we'll confirm what the process looks like for you and make sure that that question gets answered.
All right, back to our presentation so we can move along with that. We've definitely taken care of some Google Meet issues. We've looked at all of the enterprise features. Also on this slide is a list of all of the features that can be found. There are a number of other enhancements that are available to you that might be of interest. Take a look, it's just 2 pages. And the form that your school will need to fill out is also listed on this slide. There is an FAQ for just this kind of issue of around enterprise. So if you've got questions, chances are somebody else might have that question already answered. There's a video that we've got that walks you through the different features that are both free and paid that are coming up. And also a review of the safety features and collaboration features in Google Meets. Those are also a video for that on that slide. All right. You got a lot of stuff in your classrooms, a lot of moving parts, a lot of pieces, a lot of devices. There are some pieces, there are some documents here that might be helpful. There is an FAQ on getting support. There is also a guide to using Chromebooks in DPS, because most of our students have those. There is a support matrix for Seesaw and Schoology, as well as help center links for both Seesaw and Schoology. So take advantage of those. They might prove very helpful if you're running into issues. Student collaboration. It's important to remember that you're maintaining the community of your classroom. There are certain teacher moves that you can use to facilitate student talk. We want to think about recorded verbal or written communication. We want to plan for student collaboration, and we want to talk about options for student collaboration groups. So to go through fairly quickly, maintaining a classroom community, eye contact is an important component. You want to establish protocols for participation and asking questions. That might be how you use the chat. We'll see a little bit of that later. It might be how often the students are turning on their microphones to check in. It might be a way to signal to you that they have a question that needs to be answered. All of those kinds of normal interactions between you and your students, have some protocols around those transactions. Think about them ahead of time, practice them a little bit with the kids until they are comfortable with those. You may even want to consider a virtual moderator if you happen to, like Steve right now is our virtual moderator. He's helping a lot with answering questions that people have on the side so the presentation can continue. You might have a student who's capable of filling that role. That would be certainly something that they would feel empowered by if they were helping to assist the classroom. That's a very interesting option. I'm not going to, we're kind of running a little bit behind in terms of time, so I'm not going to show the video here. But there's a really cool video of a teacher using two different protocols for chat. One is called a speed chat, and the other is called a wait chat. And the speed chat is all about how quickly can you answer my question. And the kids are given a question, and it's up to them to see how fast they can answer it in the chat. The wait question, and the teacher specifically tells them, this is a speed question, or this is a wait question. So the kids know how they're supposed to interact. A wait question is more like, take 1 minute, compose your response, but don't submit it in the chat until I tell you it's time. So two completely different kinds of interactions. Both are engaging. Both should be used if you're using chat. So watch that video for an example of how to implement those. The next slide has tons of resources. If you need talking structures fluidly across settings, there's a link for that. If you want to talk about collaborative students, I think actually that whole thing is just one link. Collaborative student talk structures that are fluidly used across structures, across settings. Click on that and it opens up a document all about that.
Yeah.
There are also templates. The cool thing about these templates is that they also include note catchers. So when you're assigning students to small groups, you can also give them a link to a document that includes a note catcher that they're supposed to use in their small group. There are also other templates here. There are also examples of virtual equity sticks or talking chips. Each of these is a link to an additional resource. Next on our list is resources for you. You want to make sure that you've got kids, give kids multiple ways to express themselves. If they're always just listening, that's only one mode. If they're writing, that's a second mode. If they're speaking, that's a third mode. So we want to engage them in as many of those of the 4 reading, writing, speaking, and listening modes as we can to provide a more culturally responsive classroom. One of those is the use of discussion boards, and we have links to using discussion boards in Seesaw, Schoology, and how to collaborate with Google Suite tools. For example, having multiple kids collaboratively writing a document or filling out a slide deck together. That's an easy way also to demonstrate collaboration in a classroom in case you have an observation and they're looking for collaboration. They always do. If kids are working in a document at the same time, they're collaborating. And also a link for Google Meet question and answer polling tools. So those options are available to you. Another option is Jamboard. There is a video of a teacher who's using Jamboard. Jamboard is only available to your schools if the school requests it. It is a 13+ tool because kids can draw anything they want on there, and there's no way to track what they're doing. But you can use a Jamboard in your classroom as a virtual whiteboard. It's really easy to use. It also you can restrict it by changing the sharing settings of it so that you're the only one that can edit and you're just presenting it to the students, or you can open it up for them to edit and write on as well. It holds up to, I believe, 25 slides, which is more than enough whiteboard for one session, I think. But Jamboard is a really nice, easy to use digital whiteboard. You can also take advantage of commenting in Google Docs and other areas. There's a nice video here showing how a teacher takes advantage of commenting and using comments. So at some point, if you want to find out more about using comments, please see that teacher's video. The next one is pacing for student collaboration. You definitely want to try to chunk out your lesson into smaller bits so that they are not trying to take on everything all at once. They're working on a piece of it, they're reflecting, they're working on another piece of it, they're reflecting, they're taking time to talk to each other about it, they're taking time to write about it. You can also think about this in terms of flipping the instruction. Instead of trying to present a YouTube video in a tab, you might send out the link to the video and the instruction. The homework for today is to watch this video because tomorrow we will discuss it. It moves it to their asynchronous time, their individual work time, and allows them to see the full video without having to worry about, is it playing correctly through the Meet or not, and all of that kind of stuff. It flips the presentation of the material to the student's time, so the work around that content then is done in school time. That's kind of what flipping means. Two tools that you might want to take advantage of if you haven't yet already. One is Screencastify. If you're using the free version of Google Meet and you're recording your sessions, they will only last for a 30-day period before they will be deleted. If you have the premium version, the enterprise version, that they don't get deleted. But one way around that is to use Screencastify to just record your desktop. It's also a good teacher move to use Screencastify because you can turn on closed captioning for your view of the Google Meet session. It's another option that's there. And that will be available, by the way, in multiple languages coming up, including Spanish and French and a few others. But the students, even though you turn on closed captioning for yourself, the students don't see that. That's an option for them to turn on for themselves. It's not an option you can turn on for them. But if you turn it on for yourself and you use Screencastify to record your screen, then you are capturing all of those closed captions, live captioning, as it's happening. Edpuzzle is another great tool where, especially in an asynchronous format where you're sending instructions to kids or videos to kids, you can put in specific points where you are adding questions or reflection opportunities. You can set it so that the video only shows a certain portion of the video. You can set it up so the kids can't skip through the video. They have to watch the whole thing. Has some nice teacher options in there, and it's a great use of video. It's also a nice way to grab a video that might otherwise be blocked for the kids if it's something that's important for them to see. Next slide. All right, how are you grouping your kids? Well, first thing, you've always got to use some data, right, to determine how your groups are set up. Give some consideration for whether you want to have virtual and in-person groupings or not. This is an example on the screen now of two students on the right where one is virtual and one is in class, and they're collaborating it together in a small group. And the one on the left is a little bit larger, small group, but still two kids that are virtual, or one kid that's virtual, or even a group of kids that are virtual, plus a couple kids that are in class. One reason you might want to do it that way is to continue to establish the idea that all of the kids in your room are still a part of one community, not two separate communities. Oh, those are the virtual kids, or those are the in-person kids. It's a chance for any kid who needs to be in that group can still participate as part of the whole community. So think about how you're grouping those. Another way is just having kids who are in class and kids who are virtual. It's a little easier to manage that way because you're managing all of the kids virtually in the small group, or you're managing all of the kids physically at a time. In those cases, you would probably be having the asynchronous instruction, the time, the individual work time for the other group. So if you're working with your virtual kids, you probably then, your in-class kids would be working on their own or in their own small groups. And if you're working with the group of kids in the physical space, the collaboration or individual work would continue for the virtual kids on their own. And you would work with one side and then switch and work with the other side. Again, determining your student groups is based on data. You have specific data from your schools that you might be able to take advantage of. Think about the group size, 3 to 4 in-person students, 4 to 5 virtual students. Once you get beyond 5, definitely once you get beyond 6, the dynamics of a group is fewer and fewer people dominate the conversation. So in a group of 10 people, 2 or 3 people are the only ones actually participating. Everybody else is just listening. But in a group that's 4 or 5 for virtual kids, they are more likely going to participate than they would in a larger group. If at all possible, other staff, interventionists, paras, co-teachers, student teachers, take advantage of any other adult in the building that can manage some of these groupings. And again, here we are with mixed groups on one day based on data, and based on data, maybe another group that's based the next day based on physical location instead of mixed groups. Think about your options. You've got plenty of them available. Small group and independent work logistics. Make sure that the activities are instructed through whole group and that they are placed in your LMS and Seesaw for elementary schools. Make sure that there are protocols in place so that students know how they are collaborating, that they're not collaborating with their outside voices, they're collaborating with a quieter voice or only through written instruction, maybe for your intermediate grade kids, and whether they're in person or virtual, and whether they're meeting with you or with a platoon teacher. Maybe you're the language arts teacher and your partner teacher is math. Think about those. And just as you've already done, you've already done stations. You can do offline stations, flipped learning, and there is a nice video presentation on options for different blended and station use in your classroom. The next slide is a couple of teachers from Bradley Elementary who recorded how they are actually doing things in their classroom. Both are just a couple 3 to 4 minutes long. It's always nice to hear from another teacher how they organize things. And we do have 2 testimonials here, one from Jennifer and one from Natalie, both from Bradley. So thank you, Bradley teachers, for stepping up and sharing what's going on in your classroom. And then we have another link, a much longer video from a high school pathways teacher. Might be worth seeing because she covers things like Jamboard and Edpuzzle and YouTube and Screencastify and collaboration in documents and slides. This is well worth your time, but is from the perspective of a high school teacher. And if you want one that we made up, this is a group of ed tech people pretending to be students and a teacher and a virtual student. If you want to just see how the logistics are set up with the external room camera and the teacher presenting both virtually and in class. Very nice little 4-minute video. We had a lot of fun putting it together. Just another way to see how the pieces might be put together. This document on the next slide, the live streaming instructional guidance document, is a good one to bookmark because the information on it changes, it gets updated regularly. And this is instructional and guidance from the district about live streaming. So anytime you want to see what the latest information from the district is around this document is the one you want to check. We're closing in here. We're almost at the end. We want to give you an opportunity, though, to participate in what we call our DPS Stars groups. We have a Seesaw Stars and a Schoology Stars group. These are open invitation meetings once a week after school. You can join the Schoology groups for Seesaw Stars or Schoology Stars to see the previous meetings if you want. We record the meetings, and they're just an opportunity for classroom teachers to share their experience with the platforms and their teacher moves and how they take advantage of these LMSs. We encourage you, if nothing else, just to join the group and have access to the recordings. And if you've got time and are motivated, you could even be a Seesaw Star if you'd like, and be one of our guest speakers to help other teachers know what you're doing. I hope all of you are doing great things and that you're ready to share. So, this is an open invitation. Nobody's required. Last thing here is we have a survey, and the survey needs to be completed in order to be able to earn credit for this. So I'm going to make this available in our Schoology group. Let me grab the link for this real quickly. It's been hiding there all along, but I didn't make it available yet. In our chat and in your Schoology group anyway, you'll be able to find this now. This is the link to our Schoology course. There is at the top of our list of materials the survey link that's required in order to get credit for this course. Whew! I'm a little out of breath. I don't know about you guys. Do we have any questions? Anything that needed to be covered that I did not get around to? I'm sure there's plenty.
There are no questions in the chat or in the Q&A or in the our back channel that we have not addressed, but it looks like
Awesome.
maybe we have some stuff coming into the comments, into the chat here.
That's interesting. File requested doesn't exist. Let me double check and make sure that that's the same link as it's supposed to be. I got access to it over here. Oh, where is it? Give me a moment. There we go. No, that's the wrong enterprise. Enterprise. That's the one there.
Warren, while Matthew is resolving that, can you say more about your question?
So we have platooning teachers. So for example, 2 teachers teaching literacy for 4th grade. So if you are having live stream on the other one, and then when they go to another room, what would be your suggestions? Do they have to bring their laptop, or do they sign on to the other teacher's computer, or that sort?
If I'm understanding right, I think if we're talking about students who are in, if your in-person students are in a classroom with a particular teacher, then I think you would want them to be signed into the Google Meet for that teacher, and then students should sign out of that session and sign into the Meet with the next teacher. Does that answer your question?
No, basically there will be 2 rooms, 2 teachers. The teachers will switch. So the materials are usually on the teacher's laptop. So when the other teacher goes to the other room, so he or she has to take that laptop with her, or should that teacher just log onto the other teacher's computer or sign on or switch user so that they can get access to that particular computer so that they won't be attaching, detaching, whatever needs to be detached. Or that's why, which would be a best practice for this one.
Matthew, do you have
If-
thoughts about this?
If I understand the question right, and I may not, by the way, here's the form to fill out. You've got multiple teachers teaching multiple groups of kids, I think is the scenario. And you want a way for the person who's doing the instruction to be hosting the meet? Is that the question that I'm hearing?
Not necessarily. So for example, for a fourth grade teacher, so there will be two fourth grade teachers.
Yes.
And then they're all, one teacher is assigned to those two sections, but he is teaching literacy
Yes.
only to those two classes, while the other one is teaching math for those two classes. Now,
Yes.
the setup would be they will switch rooms.
So I would
Now-
not recommend doing that. What ends up having to happen anyway is that both the math and literacy teacher are teaching virtually to some kids, correct?
Yes, but
So instead of switching rooms, because this way you've got more flexibility with cohorts, right? You would just do your instruction from your classroom. So for a time, my kids are receiving literacy instruction while I'm teaching math to my kids in the other room. The teacher in the other room is doing the other way around. So you don't have to move people. You
Okay.
can just have them do it virtually.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
one way to try it anyway. See
Okay.
if that limits the number of adults that have to be connected to different cohorts and stuff.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Right. The other consideration there I was thinking of is that you would have to sanitize equipment if you were changing it from one person to another.
Right.
So-
and reconnecting equipment and making sure things are still connected correctly and you've selected them right in the Google Meets and so on. Most of the time though, unless you're in a fairly big school, and I don't know what the attendance is at Archuleta right now, but your in-person groupings are probably under 35. Hopefully, that's the size of one cohort. So, I mean, you could possibly switch rooms, but I think it just makes more sense that you've got your kids in your room and some of them are receiving virtual instruction from another teacher, just like they would in a breakout room with an intervention teacher. They're just getting their math instruction from your partner teacher, and you're providing language arts instruction to his kids in his room. I say his as a pronoun, but that's because I'm gender biased. Sorry.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes. Yes, Laura, I can imagine that it is pretty disturbing. That's when it might come in handy for students to have some kind of headphones, at least, so that they are able a little bit to tune out what distractions are in the physical space while they are virtually attending from another space. I agree, that's not an ideal setup. But unfortunately, we don't really have ideal setups right now. I did put a link to the form and updated the link in the Schoology course. You should be able to refresh that page there if you're there. And when I click on it, and make sure it. Oh, I know. In Schoology, it's going to tell you the file does not exist if you. Why does it do that then? I'm just going to put this in as a link and not as a link in an image. That would be much simpler. I'm going to edit this page. I'm going to delete that thing, and I'm going to put in this thing instead. going to save the changes, test the link, and it works now. Okay, so I got rid of the image. I tried to be too fancy. It was messing it up. If you refresh the course evaluation and feedback page in Schoology, just should say survey link now instead of an image. That survey link will take you to the survey. And it's also in the chat. I think in order to gain credit, you just want to go into the Schoology group and go to that feedback form page. Even if you don't click on it, that just indicates that you've seen the survey link.
Amy, I believe the answer to your question is no. I don't believe you can record the breakout rooms automatically if the original meet is recording.
Correct, that they are separate sessions from the meet itself and are not recorded automatically. I've not even ever recorded a meet breakout.
I haven't tested this, but one idea would be to consider is whether or not a student could click record. So if you had like a particular student you trusted in each group, can they click record? Is that something only adults have the option to do?
Yeah, we'd have to test. I don't know because I'm not sure that students have the ability to turn off a recording. So I'm not sure that they would be able to turn it on either.
Right. So we can test that. Amy, I'll put your question in our back channel chat, and then I'll tag you when we have an answer, okay?
Thank you.
All right, well, I don't need to keep you here until 4 o'clock. It's not a requirement. You've done more than enough time. Please get in touch with your digital coach if you have more questions. You can also get a hold of me or just send an email to edtech@dpsk12.org and somebody will answer your question. Thank you, everybody, and stay safe.
Matthew, can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah, let me go ahead and stop the recording, and then I'll just hang out here till everybody goes.